What's the story of the one kid never allowed back over at your house? I was that kid once. I was looking behind a friend's dresser for something that rolled off the back of it. I used a lighter to see behind there and his mom's kitten jumped from the other side. Just as I sparked it. Whoosh. The cat's face fur went up in a flash. The flames were gone as quick as they came. A little bit of burnt hair. Not bad, but I felt terrible. Turns out the kitten had been in the bathroom with my friend's mom while she was doing her hair. She used loads of hairspray and it was fresh on the cat. I couldn't talk my way out of it. Was banned for life. This was probably when I was like 5 or 6. But there was this boy who was my brother's friend and he often came over uninvited. Like, he lived across the road and would just be there at our door. No prior warning. Anyways, my mom never really liked him. And did tell his mom to stop letting him come back, at least with no permission. But he did anyway. AKA, the ban never really stuck. However, I do have a vivid memory of him coming over in the summer to hang out in our pool. Stepping in dog poop. Then wiping it in the pool. The pool was ruined, small cheap one. And he was immediately sent home. Hated him so much for that. Since it wasn't too far into the summer. And it was extremely hot. His name was Jacob. This was my 10th birthday. He was messing around and found B pistol my older brother had. He was pretending to be gangster with it. Holding it sideways and talking tough. We kept telling him to put it down. And he keeps yelling about popping a cap in our ass and he accidentally shoots my dad in the leg. My parents call his parents. And tell them they need to come pick him up immediately. While they were upstairs on the phone, he accidentally took a bow and shot an arrow down the hall. Into my bedroom door. Neighbor kid started just coming over to hang out with one of my kids. He was never respectful of my kids' stuff and would occasionally throw toys. The day I saw him throw a toy and a rock at our dog was the final straw. I told that little sheet to get out of my house and I said he was never allowed to be near my house or my kids again. He lived across the street. And I don't think I saw him more than once after that. His family moved away about a year and a half later. We lived on a farm and my best friend came to stay for the first time. We were outside in the field when we found a blind rabbit. We went to call my dad who came out to investigate. I was pretty used to this sight by now. There's a common rabbit disease in the UK called myxomatosis, which is a slow and miserable death for a rabbit. The best thing to do is put it down immediately. So that's what my dad did. Picked it up and twisted its neck. I don't know why neither me or my dad warned her that it was about to happen. But she was crying non-stop until her mum came to pick her up. She's still my best friend but her parents never let her stay again. This girl I was friends with grew jealous that I got along with my little sister so well and that we always looked out for each other. This girl is like 5-6 years older than my sister. One day, when no one else was at the playground, she hit my little sister on the head for no damn reason other than jealousy. She was so proud of it too. Banned from our house and, apparently, her mom banned her and her brother from the playground. More than a decade later and I still want to punch her in the face. Ugh. FCKU. Vanessa. Remember Pop Rocks? The broken up rock candy that crackles in your mouth? They were all the rage when I was in 3rd grade. I lamented my longing for Pop Rocks to my dad. Turns out he worked for the company that made Pop Rocks. He was thrilled to feel like a superhero to his little girl and that Christmas I got a manufacturer's box full of Pop Rocks. There were probably 100 packages of Pop Rocks. And I felt like the coolest kid ever making it rain and giving them to my friends. As spring broke, the neighbor kid John came over. He saw the box full of Pop Rocks. Before I could stop him, he grabbed the box and ran outside. I chased him down to the creek near our house and got there just as he flipped the box upside down and emptied the contents into the creek. My heart broke as the reason for my newfound popularity crackled, fizzled, and faded away in the sunlight. I asked him why and he said he just wanted to see what would happen. My dad asked what happened to all the Pop Rocks and I didn't have the heart to tell him. But I didn't let John into my house after that. My first year of college I had a huge birthday party. The one person that I didn't personally invite blacked out. Walked into a house a few doors down. Took his shirt off and sat in a closet until the dude who lived there found him. The residents were unbelievably cool considering the situation and kind of laughed it off. So blackout kid comes back to the party. Continues being a huge ass, trying to fight people. Making girls uncomfortable. Typical douchey college bro stuff. Finally there are a few of us left. Ready to crash. The person whose house we were at said something like, "Does anyone need any pillows or blankets?" And blackout bro yells, "Fuck you, you piece of shit." I'm a fairly pacifist type of person, but 4 or 5 of us looked at each other and somehow, without ever vocalizing it, like we all just knew what we were gonna do, grabbed him, duct taped him to a plastic chair, and left him on the porch until morning. When we woke up and went out to free him, he was completely silent and had the most embarrassed and regretful look I've ever seen a person have. My husband ordered pizza for my daughter and her friend. We'll call her T. He put the pizza $sign on the table next to the front door. When the pizza arrived, the $sign was not there. After he paid for the pizza, he had the girls empty their pockets. Of course he had the exact amount he had left on the table in her pocket. She insisted she has brought it from home. After a call to her dad, he insisted she return the money but never made her apologize. Instead, made excuses for her. In retrospect, my daughter realized that there was a direct correlation before T's visits and $sign missing from her bedroom. She was banned from our house. Kevin the underwear thief. We were around 10 and playing with Lego in my room. He left to go use the washroom. I vaguely remember thinking he was gone for a while and was planning to joke around with him about having to drop a massive deuce. 10 minutes later I hear my mom exploding and yelling for my stepdad. He had snuck into my sister's room and was shoving her underwear down his pants, and she caught him when she was coming up to see if we wanted a snack. Apparently this wasn't the first time either. Never saw Kevin again and his family moved a couple months later. When my sister started to date casually at 16, she went out with a boy in her class. He was a nice looking kid, but from a family of weirdos. The boy became obsessed with my sister, waiting for her outside school, telephoning constantly, and following her home trying to get her to like him. One night my sister noticed him standing across the street from our house in the shadows of some trees. He was just staring into our house. My sister got scared. I noticed how dad slipped quietly out the back door. Sneaking to a darkened window, I watched as dad went down the alley behind our house, crossed the street and strolled up the sidewalk to where the boy was hiding behind a tree. My dad, who was 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighed about 230 pounds, came up behind the boy, who was about 5 foot 10 inches, and grasped him by the back of the neck. I saw dad turn the boy to face him and gets in his face, talking quietly. The boy shook his head no a few times, then nodded yes a few more times. Dad pointed down the street and released the boy, who walked quickly away, never looking back. Dad casually crossed the street and came in. My mom asked, "Where have you been?" "Oh, I just got somewhere," Dad answered. Nobody else had seen this. My sister said the boy never bothered her again. We never actually banned anyone from the house while my daughter was growing up. But from grades 1-5 we did ask for prior notice before one particular friend came over. We needed time to child-proof the house. For a good 4 years. Every time this girl came over she would manage to break something. Sometimes just one thing. Sometimes multiple things. Sometimes just small items. Sometimes it was actual structural damage. If we knew she was coming over, all flatware and glass drinking vessels were put away and paper or plastic was used. All solar yard lights were quickly removed from the walkway. Anything that could smash, squash, or feel physical pain was shepherded out of the vicinity. She wasn't maliciously destructive. She just had no idea where her body was in space. Happily, this turned around for her by middle school to the point where she actually became a pretty good athlete. And she was always a sweetheart. But man, For those few years she was a human wrecking ball. Me and the kid were around 9 and were playing games on my DS. After she went home I noticed that one of my games was missing. Asked her later if she had it. She said no. But I wasn't really convinced. Few days after that I was on the phone with another friend and told her the story and how I still believed the kid stole the game. Turns out my friend had her phone on loudspeaker and the kid was over and could listen to everything I said. Next time I met her she threw the game at me and insulted me. Didn't want her back at my house afterwards. IDK if this counts, but basically in high school my house was the place everyone went to go and smoke bud. Hi mom. And so one day me and my friends had just enough left to roll a nice joint. Somehow the joint mysteriously disappeared and we went looking all over for it. This fucker conveniently points in a random direction as he says maybe it fell over there and it falls out of his sleeve. Amadeus was never allowed in my home ever again. He came back once with about 10 Oz to make it up to us and we took his weed and shut the door on him. He has not had a single person trust him in our hometown since then. Fuck you Amadeus. Welp. Kind of sad this one. I was the one never allowed back. Not because of some shitty thing that I did. It was because I was the only half-blood there. All of my friends who were there were full blood. Wealthy Chinese and I was the mixed one from a poor family. I found out the Monday after that single weekend when my friend, host, told me that her mom told her not to invite me anymore because she did not like me. I was confused, so my friend told me about the half-blood thing. From then on I have grown up extremely insecure. I never told any of my family about this. I still feel bad about it. Every summer, between the ages of 5-9, me and a group of my friends would all spend entire weeks at a time at our one friend's house who had all the cool shit none of the rest of us had. Pool, go-kart, dirt bikes, etc. One day, while all of us were in the above ground pool, one of our more rambunctious friends found out that it felt really good to press your junk against the jet that expels water into the pool. Well, we all did it, and after a good hour or so of doing so, the grandpa of the kid whose pool it was comes outside and yells, "You kids stop fucking the goddamn pool." Apparently we were causing the lights to dim and brighten in the house somehow by what we were doing. Long story short, none of us could come back for the rest of the summer. I was friends with a neighbor kid. Like 3rd or 4th grade. Same class. Same bus. We would play video games together after school and sat together at lunch. I was absent from school one day and him and the rest of my lunch table decided to rework the lyrics of the Linkin Park song In the End into a dirty song. He called me that day after school and bragged to me about it and sang it to me. I remember being like, oh cool dude. Didn't really think about it after that. Well, a little while after that his mother called my mother and was livid and told her that I wasn't allowed to associate with her son anymore because I was a bad influence. The little idiot sang his song to one of his teammates at basketball practice and the kid ratted him out. For some reason he decided to pin the blame on everyone at our lunch table, including me, despite me not even being there at the time. Fuck you, Cameron. I took a bus home listening to some music when a random girl started talking to me out of nowhere. I have never seen her, let alone talk to her, and she wasn't bothered that I was listening to music. It was a very odd conversation. However, about 20 minutes after getting home, she was standing right in front of my door. She had more or less invited herself to my home and she had brought her 8 and 10-year-old brothers with her. She insisted coming into my house, while her 2 brothers were scaring our bunnies that we keep outside. My parents were working at the time, so I just yelled at them. She seemed to get the message, because she left immediately. Yet her brothers continued to mess with our bunnies by hitting against the cages. So my 15-year-old me literally kicked them out of our property. And X200B. When I told my mother this story, she contacted their parents. She is a part-time teacher at the boys' school, who saw absolutely nothing wrong with the behavior of their kids. Guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Mom drove us all home from soccer practice, and while we were taking our dirty cleats off in the utility room, She let drop that she had Rice Krispie treats waiting for us in the kitchen. My best friend snapped to attention. Made a dash to the kitchen with his cleats still on, then stuck his greasy hands right in the middle of the pan and pulled out the center crispy treat. Mom was aghast and called his parents immediately to come get him. From then on, the poor kid had to wait an extra hour after soccer practice for his dad to get off work and drive him home. I had a friend when I was in my early teens who was a habitual thief. He always stole wherever he went. But never from me that I knew of. One day I noticed a bunch of my floppy disks were missing. This was around 1995 when they were still in use. I thought it may have been him and confronted him on it. He absolutely denied it. Fast forward a few years and I moved to another town about an hour north and he would stop by every now and then. I got my driver's license and ended up dropping by his place. We were going to throw King's Quest on his PC to give it a go and begin reminiscing about old times when he said let me go grab my discs. He came back with a pile of them including a few that looked like they had my writing on them. I popped one in his PC that I recognized and sure enough, it had my homework on it from back in the day. Funny thing was, the King's Quest discs were also mine. I grabbed them and said WTF. He shrugged it off and said it was so long ago it doesn't really even matter anymore. I walked out with my discs and never saw him again. The discs went right in the trash out of spite. I was in elementary school when this happened. I had this clueless phone that if you pressed buttons it said this says like as if. To the people on the other line. Well, the neighbor girl Ali would dial 911, press those buttons when they answered and the cops would show up at my parents'. She did it twice when finally my mom realized what she was doing. The cops would show up. She'd run out the door and sprint home and my mom would make me stand there and talk to the police and I got the blame. Her parents never cared. She peed on my bike 3 times after that and her parents still didn't do shit. She didn't come back after that. She moved about a year later and is now a teacher. It wasn't my house. But my best friend got banned from our other best friend's house because we were leaving his house and as we were leaving he texted something along the line of tell your mama I got the message and Pepe Chula will be coming back. But he texted it to our friend's mom instead of our friend. She was pissed and banned him from ever stepping foot in their house again. It's been years and the ban still stands. It's pretty funny. But I feel bad cause his mom was really hurt by that. She only hugged us cause she is caring and wanted us to feel like family. 11 or 12-year-old boy. Family moved into a house 2 down from me that the owners decided to rent out when they moved. First thing my 9-year-old son tells me it's how cool this kid's throwing knives are. Then tells me he's allowed to pee in the corner of his bedroom. Then tells me he and another neighbor were drinking his mom's wine. Then he smashed another neighbor girl in the face extremely hard with an ice ball. Wet snow he must have worked on for a while, made her bleed. After all of that, he pulled a knife on another neighborhood boy and kicked his bike over. Also he came into my garage and started going through my tool chest. Parents are tweakers and getting kicked out of the house. Feel bad for the boy. You can hear his mom going crazy on him at all times of day and night. Late to this but when I was in 5th grade my parents asked if I wanted to have a big sleepover party at the house. I was bullied a lot and didn't have many friends so I figured if people had a good time at my party they'd want to be my friends. My parents went well out for it, even setting up my room as a mini salon so we could give each other makeovers and stuff. 2 of the girls there offered to do the makeovers for everyone since they always did each other's in the past. In between makeovers, they had to set up the room before the next person but were actually going through my stuff and stealing. They took a bunch of CDs, PlayStation games, most of my money I had saved, and some of my jewelry. I didn't discover most things until about a week later when I was looking for things. It super hurt my feelings and I was too embarrassed to try and get any of it back. I told my mom and she advised me that maybe they weren't the right people to have in my life. Had a friend over at a sleepover when I was in middle school and he disappeared for a while. Found out later he went into my room and rummaged through all my stuff. Like every cabinet. My cloths and everything were shoved all around. I found out initially because he came back down the basement playing my Game Boy Advance that I had in my room. I was like, how did you get that? Weird kid. Never had contact with him afterwards. Another was when I was in college but visiting home for the summer and had a few friends over. One of my friends from high school invited a friend of his from college and the dude had no concept of cleaning up after oneself. We got fast food and brought it back to the house, and the moment he was done with something, he threw it on the floor. Half-eaten chicken sandwich? On the ground. Finished my drink mid-conversation? On the ground. Not even a minimal effort to find a trash can. This was just normal for him. Never allowed in the house again, and eventually our entire friend group stopped hanging out with him. I don't have any not allowed at my house, but I did go to my friend's house and call a few hundred IRS scammers numbers and learned that every call was 1 minute at least, no matter if they picked up or not, and racked up $90 on overseas calls on their number. His mom was also concerned that we were calling sketchy numbers, as parents do with their 11-year-old kids, and asked for every number I called. Not too bad, but I get really worried whenever I could have the chance of being yelled at. I was that kid once. I went to a private school where everyone was filthy rich. We were middle class and my parents were only able to afford to send me there because my mom was a member of the faculty. When I was in first grade, a friend in my class invited me to spend the night at his house. His house was massive. There was a pool, tennis courts, and I'm pretty sure there was a bowling alley in the basement. He had 2 bedrooms all to himself. Most importantly, he also had a Nintendo, which I had never seen before. This was around 1987 and the only console I had ever played prior to this was an Atari. The Nintendo was so much cooler than that. Anyway, I was totally sucked in. All I wanted to do was play Nintendo and I pretty much ignored my friend. I played so much that my friend went to bed without me. I don't know how long I stayed up, but eventually one of his parents came in and told me I needed to go to bed. We were still friends after that, but I was never invited to his house again. She wasn't really banned, but my parents weren't very happy to allow her over again. When I was about 13, I had a couple friends over for my birthday. I lived on an open acreage by a highway with fields surrounding it and only one other building at the time besides my house on the property. But there was also my dad's boat. We all were going to play a game of hide and seek outside despite there being not a lot of places to hide because we didn't have any trees. Couldn't go in the shed. And certainly not in the boat. It was April, so it was muddy and cold and we played for a bit. But couldn't find one girl and my dog was missing. We all went inside and about 30 minutes later she comes in with my dog all dirty. Despite me telling her under no circumstances are you to hide in the boat. She did. And she brought my dog in too. There was mud all in the carpet of the boat, and let's just say, I and my parents may have chastised her for a good while. It made me mad because it made me look like a bad kid by allowing her to do that even if she did it without my knowledge. Why she chose to ignore my telling her not to, I'm not sure. Still makes me a bit mad. Fucking Joe. Joe was a guy my husband went to high school with. We were having a party and one of our friends invites Joe. I don't know the guy. But hey. The more the merrier. Being the responsible person I am, I'm pulling blankets and pillows into makeshift beds so people can sleep off being shit-faced. My husband takes a waterproof sleeping bag out and is laying it on our couch. Apparently Joe doesn't know how to pace himself and every time he gets sheet-faced he pisses himself. I didn't really believe him. The dude was a grown man. Fast forward a few hours and everyone is asleep. And Joe is still being highly obnoxious. He's told to quiet down. Gets angry and belligerent and then threatens my husband who isn't having any of it. The situation thankfully de-escalates before any punches are thrown and everyone goes to sleep. The next morning I am greeted with a sleeping bag full of piss. FCKU. Joe. Joe was a guy my husband went to high school with. We were having a party and one of our friends invites